What up, everybody, and welcome to Baz on Blades. My name is Baz, and I talk about blades. Today's featured blade is the Kershaw Injection 3.0 and 3.5. This is going to be my first review where I'm going to review two knives at the same time, and everybody knows my reviews typically run a little long, probably average 20 to 25 minutes for one knife. So this review is probably going to be about 2.5 hours long. Just pop some popcorn and sit back and enjoy, guys. We're going to condense down a few things. I'm not going to get super big into the specs. We're going to knock the metric stuff out of there. Sorry, all of our metric fans. We're just going to do the measurements and specs in standard for these two. First thing I want to do is... I originally got the idea to do this review. My cousin Mike, I have mentioned before, he recently got into knives after watching my channel, and he brought me the Injection 3.0. He had picked this up, and this is a budget Kershaw, and it had sort of slipped past my radar. And the truth is, there is so much out there. It's everything that any reviewer online can do to just keep up with whatever is just really popular right now or just came out or whatever. Never mind the stuff from that's already in current production or older production. But he brought me this knife, and I thought, man, this is a pretty sweet little knife. I looked into it and found out there's a 3.5-inch blade version. And I thought, well, that's more my size, what I like. So I went out and grabbed one. Now, these are budget knives. And Mike was able to find this 3-inch. Was able to find this 3-inch on eBay, I believe. And he paid like $10 for it. And the 3.5-inch I also found on eBay and paid like $15 for. And before I go any further, I want to give a shout out to the seller that I bought this knife from on eBay. And I'm a repeat customer with this seller. And I'm going to tell you guys, I'm going to do an upcoming video on trusted eBay sellers, because there are some very good knife sellers on eBay. And these are trustworthy sellers that I have worked with multiple times. The person that I bought this from sells under the name Fantasy Knives Texas. One word, Fantasy Knives Texas. And I have mentioned them before. But Fantasy Knives Texas has done 43,591 transactions on eBay with 100% positive feedback. Okay, 43,000 plus transactions with 100% positive feedback. That is amazing. And like I say, I've bought multiple times from them. And I bought recently this 3.5. And the example that they sent me, there was an issue with it. And it wasn't anything bad. It was, there was some blade play, and the pivots on these are in T6 Torx, which I think is very small, and we'll touch on that later in the review. And they were stripped from the factory, so I could not adjust the blade play out of it. So I sent him an email, and the guy's name is Chuck. Chuck, thank you very much, buddy. It was a pleasure doing business for you, or with you, I'm sorry. And I sent him an email and said, hey, I'm doing this. I got a review channel, and this is what's wrong with it. Can I get another example? We'll swap them out. He sent me a message back, and this is what he said. Just trash the one you've got. I'll send you another one. Now, that is excellent customer service, and that is from Chuck at Fantasy Knives Texas on eBay. Check him out. All right, so let's go ahead and dive into this. Let's knock out some specs on these knives. I'm going to go ahead and open these up and set them here to display while I'm going over these numbers. Well, that sucked. I guess that knife is heavier on one end than it is the other. All right, so blade length on the 3.0 is 3 inches, and then for the 3.5 is actually 3 3/8 inches. Blade stock thickness, and I'm going to give the 3.0 first and then the 3.5. So blade stock thickness, 112 thousandths or 119 thousandths. Blade width, 970 thousandths of an inch or 1.06 inches. Handle length, 4 1/8 inch or 4 1/2 inch. Handle thickness, 495 thousandths of an inch or 555 thousandths of an inch. Handle width, 1.04 inch or 1.14 inch. Closed width, 1.1 inches or 1.2 inches. Overall length, 7 1/8 of an inch or 7 7/8 of an inch. Stock pin diameter, 115 thousandths or 155 thousandths. Behind the edge thickness on these two knives was exactly the same, even though one has a thicker blade stock, and that is because the blade is wider, and that gives more room to run this full flat grind. Both of these knives have very thin behind the edge measurements, and I'm stretching it to say that they're 20 thousandths. They're really about 19 thousandths of an inch, guys. Very slicey flat grinds. Handle to blade ratio on the 3 inch is 0.72, and on the 3.5 inch is 0.75, and then your weight is 3.35 ounces or 4.3 ounces respective. All right, we'll go ahead and get into materials. Materials are exactly the same between these two, and they are classic for Kershaw Chinese production knives. In the blade, you're in HCR13 MOV, which is a medium carbon, Chinese produced stainless steel. Your carbon content is 0.7 to 0.8% carbon. Chromium, 13 to 14.5%, and it is a vanadium alloyed steel with 0.1 to 0.25% vanadium. Typically rock weld around 57 to 59. You get decent wear resistance or edge retention, decent toughness or impact resistance, and good corrosion resistance. It's a mid-grade stainless steel, guys. It's going to be competitive with your 440 series and your AUS 8s. Not a world beater by any means, but a decent steel. And if you're talking $10 or $15, it's pretty decent, guys. As far as the handle, you do have machine G10 over substantial stainless liners. All right, these are not weight relieved in any significant way. They feel stout. You've got stainless small hardware, a stainless stamped and bent pocket clip, and then the back spacer is Zytel. All right, and everything that I just show you one knife, guys, is going to hold true for both knives. And I'm just going to go back and forth between them because they're the same damn thing, just slightly different size. As far as fit and finish, I am pleasantly surprised, as cheap as these are, that the fit and finish is so well done. The blade grinds are very good. They are full flat grinds. They are ground to the spine and not through the spine. So you don't see it step down here with a ridge where they've ground this plunge up through the spine. That does give you an extremely thin and slicey edge, guys. The points on both of these are extremely sharp and pierce instantly with little to no pressure. The edge grinds on both are very well done, fairly even side to side. The only exception here is there's really no sharpening choil, so you do get excessive edge flare at the termination of the edge here. That's just part of that design, guys. You do have dual thumb studs. The thumb studs are oversized for each size knife. As far as, you know, the balance of the design, I would consider them to be oversized. You go on to the handle here. The fit and finish on the handle is pretty decent. There may be a couple of spots around the radius of the handle where you might get a nail catch going from the G10 to the stainless steel liner, but it's pretty good, guys. I'm actually decently happy with this. And I'm not even saying considering the price point. I just think overall they've done a fine job on these, especially considering the price point, which I just said I wouldn't say. You've got this ball mill detailing here in the center of the handle. It's repeated on both sides, and it's very attractive, guys. Your finish on the handle scale itself is sort of an as-machined micro texture. The scales are radially finished here, so it's just not flat slabs. These handle scales feel and look very premium for the price of this knife. I very much like this. I think it's the standout feature on this knife, other than just the fantastic drop point flat ground blade design. You do get a sort of stylized pivot here, and these are just sort of little ball mill dimples going around. It's very simple, but it is attractive. It is slightly oversized on each of these knives. And the bad thing about that pivot, they are T6 pivot screws. T6 is much too small for a pivot on a knife. In my opinion, you should not build a modern lock-in knife with an adjustable pivot if it has smaller than T8 Torx for the pivot. It's just a waste. If you are off any bit at all, I mean, look at how small that is, guys. If you've got to put any force on it at all, say that pivot has some Loctite on it, you're just going to strip that out trying to get on it with a T6. I think that's just a, it's a mistake. I'm not going to say it's a issue or error or, well, I mean, it could be. It's a mistake, guys. That's just a design mistake. Those should have been T8. The rest of the hardware is T6, and it all feels pretty decent, guys. The pocket clip is sort of on the smaller, more compact side. It is very basic. It's pretty doggone stout, guys, and it clamps very hard. This knife does have raised pads on either side for left or right, tip up, pocket carry only. So that is very much appreciated. I love these raised pads. Anytime where you do extra machining on your handle scales for your pocket clip mount, it just looks better to me. All right, we'll set this one back down. We're going to go into action. These are thumb stud opening knives. They are fully manual. There is no speed safe assisted opening. These knives early in their production were substantially more expensive, and then they changed and became more of a bargain knife. And one of the things that was changed, they did go to a hybrid washer system, and that's a phosphor bronze washer on one side and a nylon washer on the other side. I don't have the early phosphor bronze versions, but that, that would be typical of this price point with phosphor bronze. And these knives, the action is typical of the price point with a hybrid washer system, guys. And, I'm just being really clunky with all of this review here. Let's get that box out of the way. All right, guys. On this 3.0, you've got decently early lockup. It is solid, guys. No issues there. And you can see, look at my hands. I am torquing on that, guys. It is solid lockup. And the action is pretty smooth. No issue there. It's not really nice phosphor bronze smooth. It is not bearing smooth. It is hybrid smooth. It is easy to flick open. It has a good detent. You can break it out of the detent with plenty of energy to just rocket it out. The downside on both of these knives, neither one of them has the best centering. Both are off to the back side slightly, and at this price point, not a huge loss. In fact, with Kershaw at this price point, I would say it's sort of expected. Like I say, other than that, pretty good. They both lock up solid. They both have good detents. The oversized thumb studs make it easy to open. It's a pretty decent opening knife. All right, we're going to go into ergos. Now, I mean, you're looking at these guys. They're the same exact knife at a different scale. These are a Rexford design, and they are very well designed. This is a very neutral handle design. Very neutral, guys. It is good in a forward grip. It is good in a reverse grip. It is good in a draw grip, a pinch grip. If you want to grip it with your toes and stab things with your feet, I'm pretty sure it would be comfortable to do that if you could. I'm not saying that I can, and I'm not going to demonstrate that either. I would probably cut myself. But as far as the handle design goes, very neutral, good in all directions, not too thick, not too thin, radiused scales, again, so you're not in just flat scales, guys. Actually, pretty doggone decent. And we're going to look at this blade. How do you think this blade is going to perform? It is a full flat grind, pointy, moderate drop point. This thing, I'm not kidding, guys. These things are so nice and thin behind the edge, and they came with good edge grinds on them and sharp. These things will slice like crazy. Slice like crazy. You put a nice thin, and you don't even have to thin this edge down. It's already like 19 thousandths behind the edge, guys. Whatever that edge angle is, I haven't sharpened these, so I don't know yet. But whatever it is, these are already super thin on the edge and very slicey, very pointy and stabby. And, this just such a great blade shape. Now, these knives do have some downsides. The major downside design flaw is in that pivot. Using a T6 torque on that pivot is insane. I don't even know why they even considered doing that. It would have been no more expensive in any shape, form, or fashion to have done this hardware with a T8 for the pivot, so I don't understand that. The other thing is sort of an aesthetic thing. You get all of this nice detailing and ball milling on this handle scale. You've got this radius milling on it. It's just super attractive. And then you look through those milled slots, and what do you see? A bead blast liner. It would have been really nice if these slots would have been matched up and slotted through those liners, guys. I know that may have added to the cost of the knife, but it would have been just a few dollars. Again, beyond that, bead blast on the blade. HCR13 MOV is not the most corrosion resistant stainless out there, and I don't really care for a bead blast finish on it. I would have preferred it to be stone washed, even if it was originally bead blast and then lightly stone washed over that to really smooth it out. That would have been acceptable also. The stamp steel pocket clip, it's not fancy, but dadgummit, that thing grips. And it's not a bad looking pocket clip, guys. It's not bad at all, but it's plain. That's the name of the game with this knife. Outside of these sort of fancy handle scales, which are not really fancy unless you look at the machining aspect, it's sort of a plain knife overall, with bead blast finishes and, black G10 and blah, blah, blah. Now, let's see what I did not talk about. Oh, I didn't talk about the backspacer. Let's talk about that backspacer, guys. And it's the exact same thing on both knives. What we've got here is Zytel backspacer. It is a one-piece backspacer with a recess here, and then you've got a captured pin. That's for your lanyard point. If you will look closely at this portion of the backspacer along the back of the handle, it does have a wide facet or chamfer on both sides and a flat top. It's sort of a semi-floating looking design. A sort of a faux floating design. But then you go to the butt end and you've got a different mill pattern on it. It is peaked with a much wider and sharper facet on each side. I'm assuming that, they wanted to keep the back of the handle with more of a flat feel, and then on the butt end of the handle, that really didn't matter as much. Those are flush with the handle scales and the liners, so there's not anything there as far as it sticking up. And it's Zytel, guys. It looks like Zytel. It feels like Zytel. Zytel can be molded to final dimensions and finishes, and it doesn't require anything beyond that unless you've got some flashing to trim off of it. But I do like the design, and faceting this the way it is and giving it that sort of faux floating backspacer look does add to it, but it's just plain black Zytel. So again, it's sort of plain, guys. It's sort of a plain knife. All right. So, as far as the downsides of this go, there you go. Nothing that's a real big issue except for the use of the T6 Torx for the pivot. And the biggest issue is apparently these have been discontinued. That's how far behind I am in my review schedule. I'm reviewing discontinued knives. But you can still grab these. There are hundreds of them out there. When I talked to Chuck at Fantasy Knives Texas, he said that the Kershaw warehouse had 600 of these, the 3.5 inch, sitting in the warehouse, and they are in clam pack packaging like this. The 3 inch that my cousin Mike got, he did get in the box. Your model numbers for the 3 inch are 3820. And for the 3.5 inch are 3830, and then with an added X for the clam pack. That's what they do. It's 3830X. I guess X for clam pack. So, guys, I hate to review a discontinued knife, but this knife really, and I'm telling you, for an everyday beater, for a utility type of knife, if you want something that is really slicey, these blade designs, profiles, and grinds are excellent for slicing. If you want something with a neutral handle in G10, then these handle designs are excellent. I just think overall, for $10 for the 3 inch version, for $15 for the 3.5 inch version, you're down there well in the price range of a sort of less expensive Ganzo model. And while they're in 440C, these are in HCR13 MOV. It's sort of a trade-off there with 440C, being marginally better depending on the heat treat. I think they are a viable alternative. I can see grabbing up a few of these knives to hand out for birthday presents, for Christmas presents, to people that just want a good, dependable, solid knife and don't know or don't know enough to appreciate anything fancier. it would be, serve well in that sort of use. All right, guys. Yeah, this review seems like a jumbled mess to me. I've had a long day and I'm trying to review 2 knives at once, and it's the first time I ever tried to do that. So I'm going to go back and listen to this, and if it's not too jumbled up, then I'll use it. If not, then I won't. As always, thank you very much for taking the time to view one of my videos. God bless all of you, and we will talk to you again.